Beyond the pain, beyond the adversity, beyond this life, it's Faith Beyond. Author, coach, and Faith Beyond founder Tim Maceyko explores grief, loss, overcoming adversity, and so much more. The Faith Beyond podcast starts now.
All right, it's Tim Maceyko here, and I see Coach D. Daryl just showed up, so let's bring him into the stream here. Daryl, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
So today I am doing something a little different. First of all, I have not done a live stream yet, and I've only been doing audio podcasts and things, so this is a little different, so bear with us if we have some technical difficulties, but so far so good. I do have three guests with me today, and we're going to be talking about something that I personally find really important. Part of my 501c3 nonprofit from the Seth Maceyko Snuggle Time Foundation is to educate the public about child safety. And as a former coach, I can tell you I didn't give a lot of thought to the mental health side of things like I should have. And if I could go back and start my program from scratch, I would definitely kind of incorporate that a little bit more. So today's episode is about the hidden dangers that student athletes face, the pressures they're under, and also we're hoping to educate some coaches, educate some parents, and even make the players aware that, it's not just you. A lot of people go through this and feel the way you do. So that's kind of what we're going for today. So I'm going to introduce all my guests. I've got them on screen already, but let's start off since Gabby's up top here with me. We'll start with Gabby Daniels from Federicktown. And Gabby, just give us a little background on your experience playing, what sports you played, and how many years, and what you're doing now.
So first off, Gabby Daniels, hi. I've played softball, basketball, volleyball whole life. In high school, I played varsity basketball all 4 years, and then varsity softball for 2-3 years, and then varsity volleyball for 2 years as well. So yeah, I played a lot of sports whole life, did the whole travel ball, everything. So yeah. And
you were recognized, I know, for basketball because I actually coached you, right?
Yeah.
You actually had a lot of awards and stuff. So you were what, all team first district, all league, all Ohioan, honorable mention, right?
Yeah, for a couple of years, junior and senior year.
Yeah, that big 5'8", 5'8" post player.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked though. It worked. All right, so thanks, Gabby, for being here. We'll talk to you a little bit more here in a second. McKenzie Bump, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm McKenzie Bump. I currently go to OSU. I played softball and volleyball in high school, varsity all 4 years for both, and then I decided to play softball at the next level, and I'm going into my senior year now for that.
Yeah, so you are at the Ohio State University, big Buckeye, senior year softball. That's really cool. That's really great to have you on, have that experience. And I'm glad you're here because I want to talk a little bit here in a moment about what resources are available at the high school level versus what you have available at college. So we're going to talk about that. And that'd be good for the school administrators to hear too. So we'll talk about that. But before we get there, Coach D, Daryl, introduce yourself.
Hey, so again, my name is Coach D. I guess birth name is actually Daryl Thomas Jr., but I go by Coach D. I now teach leadership development. That's what I coach to all my student athletes that are in high school and college. But my background, I spent time in the Marine Corps. Prior to that, I actually went to high school and played some high school ball. Football in particular is what I played. After I got out of the Marine Corps, went in and did some semi-pro football as well. So have a little bit of experience on those two fronts. But yeah.
Great. Thanks for being here. I appreciate that. I know we'll talk a little bit about your book here in a little bit and give us a little more background about yourself. But let's just start off. Again, this is for parents. This is for coaches. This is for other players, people who may not have realized the pressure that we as a society are putting on our young kids. I think about, like I said, I ran my program and we reward winning. And so for 2 years in a row there, the Mount Vernon News gave me Coach of the Year, like back-to-back seasons, because we had a great record. But when I look back on that, I think, man, I wasn't a great coach. Record-wise, I was, but I was missing pieces that I really wish I would have done a better job with. And so, again, that's what we're talking about today. So I own it as a parent, I own it as a coach, but I want to make sure we're helping the kids out there. So this article here said the recent deaths of college student athletes comes amid an increase in suicide rates among women ages 20 to 24 over the last couple of decades. And so men have rose as well, but at a smaller rate than the females. So that's why I have some of the females on here too. I really wanted to really hit home with them. It says parents, you need to have conversations with your kids. And so that's a missing piece of the element. Like, we are not talking to our kids as parents about their sports unless it's about, hey, how did you perform today? Did you win? Why'd you miss that shot? Why didn't you hit that ball? Wish you could have got that one back, don't you? These negative things, sometimes the coach is riding them, and then the parents are riding them on the way home, and then, it snowballs. And so, Gabby, why don't you share with us for a moment, like, some of the pressures you felt from either from the coaching perspective and from maybe your family members as well, not even just your parents, just family members, because you come from a background of a family who's a great family, by the way, but very competitive. Didn't your uncle go to Findlay and have all kinds of like basketball success and all that?
Yeah, so most of my family has gone to Fredericktown, played at Fredericktown, Hall of Fame at Fredericktown. And then I had an uncle who went to the University of Findlay, played basketball and baseball there, had scholarships, did amazing, was captain his junior and senior year, and eventually got into the Hall of Fame there. And most of my family are coaches locally too for basketball. So definitely a lot of pressure came from that. I think I felt expected to perform a certain way and, meet the same goals that they did when they were my age. And it was definitely a lot. And coming from, I'm sure McKenzie understands this too, coming from small town, you definitely feel the pressures of, everybody watching you, everybody knows everybody. It eats you. I mean, it's in your head all the time. So. Yeah.
And so that's what I kind of want to get at there was that sometimes we put extra pressure on ourselves mentally because of our success of our family members and the expectation. McKenzie, what about you? What's your situation on that?
Like Gabby said, the whole small town hero thing, I think is always a big thing. I remember like some of the biggest pressure I ever felt was like in high school ball, being the travel ball player. Like every time someone made an out on me, it was their World Series. And I remember like a lot of times, like I'd hear the parents like, talking about me while I was up to bat and stuff. And I remember like being 14 years old, like that got to me very easily. And then my dad also being a good athlete when he came up through school, like I remember everyone being like, oh, is Jeff your dad? I'm like, yeah, that's my dad. They're like, oh, that guy could do this, and this. And being like, okay, gotta let everyone know that I'm his daughter then. I just think that like when I got to the college level, I realized like there's a very big difference in pressure. As a young athlete, you already put it on yourself. And then you get to that next level and you've got coaches, your parents aren't at practice. They don't see practice. They don't see anything going on. So all they think is like, why aren't you playing? Like, what's going on? All this. And I think like the hardest thing for me in college was putting a bunch of pressure on myself, whether you're on the field or not. Like even once you get on the field, then all you're thinking about is not getting, taken off of it. So that's like a big thing that I've noticed from high school to college.
Yeah. You said something here I really want to point out. I want to stress this. You said as a 14-year-old kid, I'm up to bat and I'm hearing other parents say things about me and to me. And I think we get in our society, we get so caught up in this competition thing, and we think we can say things that just aren't appropriate, all in the name of, well, we're at a sporting event. It's okay. I can yell at the official a certain way, and I can yell at other kids. And, it's not like in normal life, we are good people probably, and we probably wouldn't do those things. But for some reason, we get caught up in the psychological piece, and we say things. And so I want to stress that to parents who may be listening to this. Remember, the things you say to these kids are affecting them. And if it's a negative comment, especially from the other team, they don't even know you, right? And so you can really take that to heart. So I'm glad you brought that point up. Darren, you want to weigh in here a little bit about some of this you've heard so far?
I'll be honest with you, Tim. I'm a father of 5 kids. 2 of them are adults now. One is in the Marine Corps. One is at TCU. He played football at the high school level. And then I have 3, student athletes that are in high school right now. And part of it is, yes, you do want them to excel, especially in something that you see that they are gifted and talented in. You want to see them excel, but you also want them to enjoy it. And so for me, I found myself coming from that Marine Corps background, being that hard charger, like, no, let's go. You got it. No, you need more. I'm expecting more from you, that kind of thing. But I also saw myself saying, hey, you know what? Life is too short for all of this. Let's take a step back. Listen, do you enjoy it? Because if you enjoy it, then I do expect you to play at your highest level. But if you're not enjoying it, then hold on, let's rethink. And so the son that's at TCU now, he's not playing football because high school is as far as he wanted to take it. And yeah, I wanted to see him suit up, at TCU, which is his dream school. But at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about him. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed as a parent is learning how to kind of back off and not add to that pressure, because it's enough pressure as it is.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think as a parent, I look at my own daughter. See, I coached my daughter's class from 4th grade all the way through 8th. And then I watched them have success in high school. And I took a lot of pride in the fact I helped build that. But then I look back and I think about how much pressure I was put on my own daughter, even a higher level, because I wanted her to have more success than maybe even more than she wanted. And sometimes as fathers, we tend to do that sometimes. And we got to be very careful because we're adding that extra pressure. So let's go back again to McKenzie and Gabby. And let's talk a little bit about the pressure that you felt and how you maybe handled it different times. So let's start with Gabby again. Gabby, let's think back to a time in high school here where you felt a lot of pressure, and then did you have an outlet, or what did you do, whether it was good or bad? Because here's what we're getting at. Almost 1 in 5 teenagers have considered suicide. Nearly 10% have attempted it. Now, I'm not saying that you considered it. I'm just saying that with that statistic, we got to be aware that we are putting pressure on kids. They feel it at different times. And so I'd like to hear maybe a story or a moment in your time where you really felt that immense pressure and how you handled it at that moment.
Yeah, so I mean, my junior year, we were having a pretty good program, and I got pretty sick and just was going through a lot personally. So I didn't feel like I had anyone to really go to and talk about that stuff at home or around me where I didn't feel judged. So I decided to try therapy and just talk to a stranger and just talk about everything and get an outside perspective from someone, who didn't even know me before, doesn't know my family, where I come from, like that kind of thing. And I think that's what helped me the most was therapy and just talking to someone about, everything that was just going through my head and everything that was going on, even from someone who didn't completely understand it. It was nice to just talk to someone and not feel judged or feel like they're going to look at you a certain way because, you don't know each other. Just talking to a complete stranger just helps tremendously.
Yeah.
So therapy was a big help.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. McKenzie, what about you?
I would say in high school, I handled my pressure a little differently than I do in college. I remember my parents were always they're kind of the strict, hard parents where my dad would be hard on me, but I knew it was because he wanted what was best for me. And that's how he got the best out of me. And like I said, when you get to college, it's a little different. You don't have mommy and daddy there all the time. You have coaches who are paying attention to 25 other girls around you and don't really know exactly who you are or how to help. So when in high school and stuff, I was able to go to my parents, even on a hard day, and be like, sometimes I'd break down after games and stuff. Like I said, parents yelling at me, saying mean things and stuff, and I'm up to bat. I'm thinking about that the whole game. I get home, tell my parents, and, they might not understand, but just me being able to vent and get it out helps me a lot. And then when I got to college, like I said, I didn't have them there. I would vent over the phone to them and stuff, but they're just not in those shoes to truly understand. And they never really went to that extra, that next level to really understand what I was going through. So they were there to listen, but they couldn't really help. So I found the most value in the people around me who go through the same thing every day, and all of us finding an outlet for each other. And luckily mine was my faith. So going to church and stuff like that, it was a big thing that helped me and realize I'm not valued based off of, athletic ability. Like there's so much more out there, and there's a bigger purpose. So that's what truly helped me get through that, that hard part of, oh my gosh, I'm not playing softball like I always have. Like, what do I do now? I'm not McKenzie Bump, the softball player anymore,
Yeah. Well, great information to have, because I think as parents sometimes we overlook these things, and so it's good to hear that you were able to talk to your parents. It's good, Gabby, you were able to talk to a therapist, what you felt you needed, and I think both of those situations are important. But again, we want parents to understand out of this conversation today that you need to have honest and upfront conversations with your kids. And sometimes those conversations aren't pleasant, because you're the dad and you're mad about the performance or whatever, but you got to digest that and say, okay, look, this is my baby girl, this is my son, this is my blood, and you need to build them back up in those moments. And so it's hard to do sometimes as a dad, I can tell you, but it's necessary. Let's go to Coach D. I'm going to come back to you, McKenzie, in a moment, because I want to talk about the difference in what resources you had in high school versus what you got available to you at college. But before we go there, Coach D, what are some things, like when you go out and talk to kids about leadership and all these things, about handling pressure in general terms, not just maybe the sports, but in general terms, what are some of the highlight points that you think you would like to share today?
I think, Tim, exactly what the young ladies are saying. In my book, I talk about the importance of an and one. And an and one is a person that's going to add value. So it's a person in your life or people in your life that are there strictly to add value. They're not trying to take from you. They're not trying to get what you have, trying to get the clout or whatever it is that you may have. They're not after that. They just want to see you well. They want to see you succeed. They want to see you become the best version of you and live your best life. And those are your and ones. Those are people that you do want to go to, especially when the pressure is on. You want to be able to go to that place because you know that's going to be a safe place. The other thing about the and one is that they're not just going to tell you what you want to hear. A lot of times they're going to tell you what you need to hear. And that's that's that thing right there. So sometimes when you're conditioned to hearing the coach, rah, 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 you thinking that's probably what you need to hear from your and one, when truth of the matter, that's not what you need. What you probably need is, hey, come here. Let's shut that down. Put the playbook to the side. Come on, let's go. Let's go kick it. Let's go enjoy one another. Let's spend some time together. Let's watch a movie. Maybe that's it. On the flip side, it may be where you're in the slump and you do need to hear that rah, rah, right? But the and one is going to give it to you. And so that's something I would say that I actually show. I show the student athletes and just the young kings and young queens that I work with, period, how to do just that, how to identify those and ones, and then how to lean in and get the help from those and ones. The second thing I would say is really just knowing who you are. I think you said that beautifully, McKenzie. When you know who you are, you begin to separate yourself from the game, because the game is only for so long, but I have to live with me for the rest of my life. And if I don't know who I am and fall in love with who I am, then I end up missing really the essence of life. And so one thing that I love that Mark Twain said, he said the two most important days in your life is the day that you were born and the day you found out why. And that's what I try to teach the student athletes and the young people that I work with. Begin to find your life's purpose, because when you can do that, you can be on the team and your purpose could be to encourage. Your purpose could be to lead. Your purpose could, whatever that is, but begin to walk out that purpose, whether you're on the field, whether you're off the field, walk out that. And it's going to be way more meaningful. So, one, and then find your purpose. Yeah. I love
that. Great stuff, Coach D. When I do my coaching now I work a lot with child loss parents and bereavement and grief and overcoming adversity situations. We talk all the time about if you can't find that new purpose, then you're going to struggle. Like until you can use the adversity to create a new path and move forward. We always say you don't usually move on from like a child loss. Losing a child is such a unique experience, but you can move forward. You can use it to draw from and to build upon. And it may not be a path you expected to take or wanted to take, but it's where you're at, and that's part of life. So no matter what you're in, that adversity can be used as a strength in the long run, even though it may feel really painful at the moment. So I think that's a great point, Coach D. McKenzie, let's go back to you because I want to talk a little bit now about resources. and Gabby, you can weigh in on this as well, but high school, in general terms, and I don't know, I'm asking because I didn't really get into the administrative side of things when I was coaching in the high school system, but what resources did you have at the high school level when you were struggling? So let's start with you, McKenzie, then Gabby, I want you to weigh on that too, and then we'll come back, McKenzie, after that and talk about what resources are available to you at the college level. But first, let's start in high school. What resources were available to you at high school?
Honestly, Tim, I'm not sure if there truly was resources. There's obviously a guidance counselor, but when it comes to sports and stuff, I don't really remember ever having somebody truthfully to go to, unless it was a coach or something. Like I said, my parents were my outlet, so that's what I was able to use. But people who didn't have that outlet, I don't think that they truly had an outlet when it comes to going somehow through the school.
Okay, fair enough. And Gabby, same question to you. Do you have any resources available to you? Do you feel like you had any resources available to you?
I think I agree with McKenzie. I don't think we really, yes, we had a guidance counselor, but they wouldn't really weigh in on sports a lot. We never really met with the guidance counselor or talked about anything. I mean, unless you had a coach or a teacher you felt comfortable going to talk about things. There was never really conversation about, mental health and at sports, having someone to go to. I don't feel like we had that unless you had a personal, person to go to.
Fair enough. And actually, I expected that answer. I really did. And that's one of the reasons I want to do this show was because I wanted to stress to people the fact that as parents and as school administrators and even as coaches, we've got to stop and reevaluate how we're running our programs at the high school level, what resources we're offering our youth, our kids. Some of them are really struggling, and we've seen in this area where I live in Ohio, we've seen a few different suicides over the last several years of student athletes who have felt so much pressure, and teens in general, but then you add that extra little element of being the student athlete and the highly competitive kid, and it adds a whole other dimension. And there's not the resources that I've seen at least in my area that are available that probably need to be, and we need to reevaluate that and think about that. And so I'm hoping administrators and parents, you can reach out to your school systems and have these conversations, talk about what can we do to offer those resources that we don't currently have. I think it's an important conversation, especially this day and age. When I played back in my day, I was an athlete, but I didn't have the pressure. If I had a bad game, I went home and I was upset or whatever, and I was done though. If I had a bully at school, I went home, I had to deal with that bully till the next Monday after, for the weekend or whatever the case may be. These days, it's 24/7 for all of you. 24/7, social media, all the different things, you can't get away from the pressures. And so I think because of that alone, we have to reevaluate some of these mental health resources we're providing to our teens at high school in general, and then the student athlete pressure piece as well. So from there, actually, let's stop for a minute. Coach D, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, do you know of any resources at other schools that maybe we're not aware of that we haven't mentioned? Then we're going to talk about the college level.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, Tim. When I think about the resources, and that's the reason why we do what we do, because we began to see a gap. We saw the suicide, and the thing I like to say about suicide is that it really is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Sometimes our young people and those that contemplate and attempt suicide, they don't realize that, man, you know what, if I can just figure out a way to outlast whatever the pressure is, if I can figure out a way just to press through or to alleviate, to relieve the pressure, it's going to be all right. And so for us, we've actually developed a curriculum called Heads Up Leadership. And essentially what that does, it's drawing the connection between positive mental health and effective leadership demonstration. And so it's helping the students to see, in order for me to show up as a leader, because we truly believe that inside of every leader is a solution to a problem, right? And so inside of that student, there are solutions that need to come out, but they'll never come out if you don't recognize yourself as being a leader. And even before then, before you can show up as a leader, you now have to make sure your mental well-being is intact. And so we teach them through this curriculum how to regulate the emotions, how to enhance their mental health and things like that, so they can show up as that effective leader. whether it's on campus, on the field, or at home. It doesn't matter. We're giving them those skills, those skill sets. And so I think that's a valuable resource there. And I would say this for those administrators that may be listening in, those educators or whatever, coaches, really identifying some of those organizations and companies that are out there to partner with to help you, because while you're focusing on coaching, you're focusing on academics, there's an organization or a company there that's willing to come in, lock arms with you to help make your student athlete a holistic leader, right? A holistic citizen, if you will. So I would say that you may not have the resources there established. That's fine. Consider partnerships. But yeah, Heads Up Leadership is our way of contributing to that positive mental health for the student athletes.
Great. Thank you for that feedback. I mean, that's a great plug, and actually that's a great kind of concept of what I'm talking about. How do we partner up? How do we create programs? What do we need to do to offer the resources? So McKenzie, you went to college, you went to The Ohio State University, huge school, right? Huge college, lots of money coming into that system. What kind of resources did you find that were available to you there?
Yeah, so we have an entire sports psych team. Each team gets their own person, and then they normally come in a couple times a year, ask the team questions, kind of make us do little things to try and interact with each other. And then I noticed a big thing that a lot of my teammates use is the one-on-ones. And it doesn't have to be specific to the one person that we're given for the team. You can use any of them, and they really create this great, bond between them and the therapist, really, back and forth. And they normally do a meeting once a week, and it can be on the computer, it can be in person. And a lot of our girls use that throughout the season. And they started in the fall when we're not super heavy in softball to create that relationship. And as we move into, full season, it's full go. They continue that while we're on the road, and they're able to just talk about new things every week that might be getting to them, how to get out of it, how to take the next step. Some girls do it for softball and some do it outside of softball. I know some of our girls relationship problems, they pretty much just anything they need that week, they just have maybe 30 minutes to talk to someone and then, listen and then give advice. And I know a lot of them have had a lot of success with that.
Great to hear. This is what I was talking about, having resources that the college, the colleges have resources. I know they have money and they have more stuff than the high school has, but we've got to find a way to translate some of those same types of services into our high school systems, because we are talking about junior high kids committing suicide. We're not even talking about high school. We're talking about early on. And that's a really scary thought, because as Coach D said earlier, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? I remember back, and I don't typically share this very often, but for those of you who don't know, I was a pretty good athlete back in the day myself. And Friday night, I'm scoring 17 points in the basketball game. Saturday, I got 16. And Sunday, I'm in a hospital bed, paralyzed from a car accident. I can't walk. I can't feed myself. And it was a struggle learning to walk again. I couldn't play organized sports anymore. And so that's what led me into coaching eventually. But there was a streak there where I got so frustrated, I got in my wheelchair and I wheeled myself out in the middle of the night to the kitchen, and I was planning to commit suicide because I was so frustrated. And then something called out to me, and it was just in my mind, don't do this, and I had these visions of all the positive things that were yet to come. And I didn't do it. I went back to bed and I cried myself to sleep that night, and I'll never forget, I woke up the next day and I felt a little different. I was still the same person, still struggling, but there was something just felt a little differently. And I always said, I think God spoke to me that night. He said, it's not over yet. And so I hold on to that faith. And then the weeks ahead, I saw the most improvement I had ever seen in those months of being in that wheelchair. And suddenly I was able to stand up again. And soon I was walking. And eventually I was back in the gym shooting a basketball. I could never run again quite the same. I could never use my right side of the body quite the same. But I was playing the open gyms at college with the other guys, and I was hanging. Wasn't the athlete I was before, but I had learned to recover and use what gifts I had left. And that led me into coaching, which I did for a number of years. and now it's led me to where I'm at today, which is shows like this, the Faith Beyond concept, finding faith beyond the adversity in our lives. So if I had ended that day, look at all the things I would have missed. I'm now married. I got grandbabies, had 2 beautiful grandbabies now, and I'm having a joyous life. So, hang in there and hold on, because it does get better. Gabby, let's go back to you for a moment. We talked about some negatives now. Let's talk about some positives. So let's think about some moments you were struggling and maybe your parents or somebody said some things to you that made you feel good, or just give us some concepts of what helped pick you up when you were at your lowest.
Yeah, so I actually had a cousin I would reach out to a lot about all the struggles I went through with basketball and pressure and everything. And he sent me a long paragraph, and it was just very eye-opening. And it was just about, this doesn't make you who you are. You'll figure out who you are, like, outside of this. And, just, you got to stay true to yourself. And this isn't everything for you. There's so much more that's going to happen that is so much more important than a basketball game, than, a newspaper article, than people texting you saying, like, hey, what happened in that game? Like, there's so much more important things than just the game itself. I mean, just figuring out who you are throughout all this and getting through it, and just knowing what you want to do with your life and all those positive things. Just, yeah.
Yeah, Gabby, I love that, because we tend to identify ourselves, especially at a young age, with we're an athlete. I'm an athlete. That's who I am. That's not who you are. That's part of what you're passionate about. It's part of what you like to do, but you're so much more than that. And a lot of times we equate our success on the court or on the field with who we are as a person, and that's so far from the truth. So I love the fact you're able to recognize that. So that's wonderful. McKenzie, what about you? Give us something that picked you up when you're feeling at your lowest. Parents, friends.
Yeah, I would say my parents are my pride and joy. So they've always been the one there for me. Like I said, my dad was always hard on me, but especially as I got older, I knew, it was the love he had for the game and the love he had for me. He was the dad that was doing my stats before the game to let me know if I batted this, that my batting average would go to this, and if I batted this, and it'd go down to this. But he'd always joke, like, before the game, like, I don't care if you go 0 for 5 or 5 for 5, like, I still love you. And, like, he stood behind that. Like, no matter what, I knew, it wasn't about the softball. It brought us close together, but that's not what made him love me. My mom, she was just a typical mom. She brought me my snacks. I was her baby no matter what I did on the field. So there was just nothing that could ever compare to the way that they made me feel no matter what I did on the field. And the pride that they always showed that, I'm their daughter, softball player or not. And at the college level, I would just say, like, seeing the little girls in the stands that say, like, McKenzie Bump's my favorite player, like, they have no idea who I am as a person. Like, they see me on the softball field smiling, no matter what I'm going through. But I remember being that little girl in the stands thinking, like, oh my gosh, that's my favorite player out there. And that's when I really realized, like, I'm changing little girls' lives, like, through softball. So softball is, like, my avenue to change little girls' lives and give them the hope that they can chase their dreams and they can get where they want to be, just like I was that little girl one day.
Yeah. McKenzie, what are you hoping to do after you graduate? Like, what's your long-term plan? I want to ask Gabby that too. I forgot, but we'll come back to her. So what's your next step after college ends?
Yeah. So I'm majoring in sports industry. I'm going to get my master's in sports management. I'd like to be a college coach, but it's hard to know whether, I'm going to get a college job or not. Coaching in general is my passion. And after everything I've been through, like, being able to help any girl at any age, softball wise, and, like this, like, mentally, to know, we all go through it and help them. Like, I wish I had the help when I was younger. That's pretty much my goal, whether it comes from coaching or player development or anything like that. Like, I just want to be able to help little girls that were in my shoes.
Nice. I like it. And I think you're going to be phenomenal just based on the discussion today, just the personality and the answers. I think you're going to be great. Gabby, I know you did not play college basketball. You decided to focus on your studies. And what is it that you plan to do?
Yeah, so during high school, our team had the opportunity to go work with some children who had disabilities and, teach them to play basketball. And it was the Unstoppables. And it was just a great organization to go talk with those kids and the parents. And that really inspired me to do what I want to do, which is I'm majoring in occupational therapy. I'm trying to get my doctorate in occupational therapy to hopefully work with children who have disabilities and just to be able to help them do day-to-day things. But yeah, that's my goal.
A really noble cause as well. I love it. Two great girls here and two phenomenal careers ahead of them. Coach D, let's come back over to you. Any thoughts on what you've been hearing the last 5 minutes?
There's a lot of thoughts. I think, McKenzie, I think about what you had said as far as your mom and dad being your pride and joy. And one thing I wonder is, what was your dad's experience growing up, in terms of the influence from his parents and things like that. And the reason why I say that, same thing with you, Gabby, when you said you had a chance to go visit some of the children, and now that's inspired you to do what you want to do. And again, this the point that I'm making here, Tim, is that for me, I realize that a lot of things in life, they're not happening to us, but they're happening for us, be it good, bad, or ugly. They're happening for us. I remember a time when I walked into a 7th grade classroom looking to talk to my favorite teacher, who was Coach Robbins. And long story short, he wasn't there. It was a substitute teacher. The reason why I wanted to talk to him is because I knew that I had such heavy things on my heart. I needed to get this off my chest. And anyhow, the substitute teacher told us to take out a sheet of paper. She said, write today's date, your name. And then she said at the top right-hand corner, write 4 words. I am a winner. And I'm looking at her like, man, okay, this is corny, but I'll go ahead and write it. And then she began to break down what it meant. She said, I'm a winner simply means no matter what you go through in life, no matter how crazy it is, how unfair, how undeserving it may be. She said, you do win as long as you don't quit. Quitters never win and winners never quit. Well, I had went on from that day, never saw her again a day in my life, but every single day when I walked into that classroom, I wrote those words. And eventually what happened is I went through 7th grade, 8th grade, my 9th grade year, it went from my head to my heart. Now I started to identify myself as a winner. No matter what I'm doing, I'm still a winner, right? I just got to figure out how to make it past that. And so, long story short, my dad ends up losing his life due to domestic violence. I'm there, freshman in high school. He dies in my arms. While I'm there on the ground with my dad in my arms, I look over my shoulder, and God placed my brother right there at the right time, knowing I was going to look over my left shoulder. Because I was already contemplating the woman that had killed my dad, I was going to kill her, just life for life. That's the way I was kind of, brought up in my environment. But when I looked at my little brother, Quincy, I found a reason to be the change I wanted to see in this world. And so, again, that situation with my dad, it didn't happen to me. Me not having my favorite teacher there at that particular time, it didn't happen it happened for me. Like, it was good that he wasn't there because I got something that helped me to shape my identity. And when I was tested the most, my biggest test, I was able to fall back on that identity, which is I am a winner. And on top of that, I had a reason why I needed to win, which is my little brother. So I'm so happy to hear what you ladies are saying when you said that you got a pretty solid idea as to what you want to do in this world. And I think what you want to do is phenomenal. I think it's phenomenal because you're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for others, right? And when you can begin to play life in that kind of way, man, the impact you make is immeasurable. So salute.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Great share, Coach D. I'm actually going to have you back if you'd like to on a different show because I'd like to talk to you solo more about your personal story specifically because I know you have a lot to share and so I definitely want to invite you back later. But we're going to kind of wrap this up here. I'm going to go around the circle one more time here and talk to everybody. But before we do, Parents, I think what you need to take away from the show today is to make sure you're talking to your kids, you're giving them support and love, and you're having those conversations. Even when they don't want to talk to you sometimes, you may have to push a little, get in there and get them to open up, because it's the ones that don't talk, and then suddenly you say, well, we never saw that coming. But the lines of communication probably weren't there to begin with. And if you can't talk to them, like Gabby mentioned, maybe it's a cousin, maybe it's another uncle or an aunt or somebody they can open up to, find a way to make a connection for the benefit of your child so that you're not faced with a situation you don't want to be faced with. From a coaching perspective, I hope the coaches take away from today the idea that there's not a lot of resources at the high school level, so you high school coaches need to think about how can I incorporate some of these things, whether it's Coach D's program or a program we create on our own or another program. What resources are we going to give our kids, and how are we going to have moments that aren't about the sport? I know that's one thing we tried to incorporate this last year at Federicktown was, going to do some things outside of the gym and doing some other things. And I think that's important. But beyond that, it needs to be conversations. It needs to be things that aren't always about the sport. So from an administrator standpoint, please take away from this today. Do something about providing resources for these high school kids, these junior high kids. They need it. They need it. So we all have a job to do here, and we can really help these kids in a positive way. So think about it. Let's go around one more time. Gabby, any last second thoughts here on anything you want to say? And again, I know your parents, I know them personally, your dad kept scorebook for us, right? And just a phenomenal family. You have a phenomenal, they're just very competitive, kind of like McKenzie's. I know McKenzie's dad too. He was uber competitive growing up. I played ball against him, so I remember the days. Anything you want to say though, Gabby, last second?
Yeah, I think, in high school, I definitely got the pressure from everywhere. So I think, from a coaching standpoint, there needs to be more conversation outside of just, your performance. I think there definitely needs to be conversation about how student athletes are doing mentally and, how they cope with things, how they deal with them, everything. Because if we don't know what other people are going through at home, and so I think there needs to be conversations, in school, whether it be with teachers or guidance counselors, administrators, coaches, parents. Communication needs to happen. I think I was lucky enough to be mentally strong to be able to handle that, and unfortunately, some people are not as strong that way. And so I think there definitely needs to be conversation of, how can we help you? How are you doing? I think there just needs to be a lot more communication on that end from everyone.
Yeah, great points. In fact, I was thinking that I didn't mention this earlier. I meant to. I wish from a high school coach's standpoint, I would have had better training coming into the system. I think the school system ultimately should have said, here's the stuff you need to do in order to be trained in this aspect, because that's something we kind of overlook. And so a lot of coaches come in from the outside world and maybe don't have that background or have that knowledge and don't think about it and do a poor job of that. And so I agree with you 100% that I myself wish I would have done much better than I did. So well said, Gabby. McKenzie Bump, last second thoughts.
Yeah, I would say as a coach, know your players, know how to coach them to get the best out of them. They want to do good for you just as much as you want them to do good for you. So like Gabby said, have the conversation. It takes 5 minutes to, understand how somebody needs to be coached to get the best out of them, along with the players. Don't be afraid to have that conversation. Your coach might not always be the one to reach out to you, but if you have to go to them, that's your big first step of, becoming an adult or, getting older. And don't be afraid to speak to people, even if it's not your coach. I was lucky enough to have the avenue of my parents. Not everybody does, Find your person, like Coach D said, your and one, stick with them and write it out. Don't be afraid to speak up about what's bothering you. The more you, let it eat you alive, the worse it gets. So if you can stop it as soon as it starts, you'll make it a lot further that way.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Coach D, why don't you give us your final thoughts on this conversation?
I think at the end of the day, to your point, Tim, and to what Gabby and McKenzie said, we all have a part to play. And I think just understanding that we can't take those parts lightly. what I look at is that rate is the suicide rate that you continue to allude to. And to me, those are precious lives that we lose. Those things were preventable. They were preventable had we just stepped up and played our specific roles, whether it's teammate, player, coach, whoever it may be, parents. If we just take our roles seriously, this is a life, man. This is a life worth helping, worth supporting. And so to me, that's really what it is. Like, stop looking at people on a superficial or on a surface level, but start to look at them for who they really are, and make sure if you have the opportunity to do whatever you can, do it. One of my favorite quotes, and I'll leave you with this. One of my favorite quotes is, "The candle loses nothing by lighting another candle." And I think that's so true. We have so much to gain if we just focus on how can I help this person, because that person's on my heart right now. How can I help them? So yeah, go light candles, guys.
I love it. Coach E, your book. Let's talk about your book real quick before we wrap this out here. I know you have a book, and why don't you plug that? Where can people find it? I think you've been inspirational today. So if someone out there listening wants to get your book, what's it titled? Where do they find it?
One of the things, like I said, mentioned for my the substitute teacher that taught me I am a winner, I went on to teach that to my kids. Every single day they would say I am a winner and today I win. We repeat that, just trying to get that into their hearts. And so I had went on and I had wrote a book as well. It's called Today I Win, When Tests Go Beyond the Classroom. Typically, a lot of the things that our young people are dealing with has nothing to do with academics. But yet we're like, okay, why are you dropping the ball over here? Your grades are low. You're not coming to school on time, whatever it may be. And to what McKenzie said, if you just take the time just to get to know me, what Gabby even said, like, just let's have conversations. Do you know who I am? Do you even know what I'm going through? And so it speaks to that. It speaks to those childhood hardships and challenges that I had faced growing up. But it also shows the 7 principles that helped me to overcome so that I could win. And so I highly recommend for those that are parents, this is a resource that shows you how impactful a parent's role is in the lives of your children. It's also a resource for educators, to show you what your students really can be going through and how you can be an impact to them. And then, of course, it's for the students and the student athletes. So it's something that just about anyone that picks it up can take, and they can begin to implement some practical solutions for their students especially the ones that may be struggling. But yeah, where you can find it, just go to my website. It's Darryl, DARRYL Thomas.com. And you can find it right there. If you want to follow me, I'm on all social media platforms. Again, the number 1, Darryl, DARRYL Thomas.
All right, Coach T, thanks so much. Again, wrapping this up, I take ownership of the fact that I could have done a better job when I was running my program. So now my goal is to help you do a better job of running your program from an administrative standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. I could have done a better job as a parent as my daughter came through. And so now, again, I'm hoping you will do a better job than I did as a parent and being supportive and saying the right things and being there for your kids. So that was the goal today. I felt like, it was something that we need to talk about. So Gabby, best of luck with going back to college next week. McKenzie, hope you have a great senior season. And Coach D, once again, thanks for being here. That's it for everybody. And until next time, this is Tim Maceyko, Faith Beyond. Keep the faith.